Yo guys, today I wanted to go ahead and start talking about star resonance. So if you don't know, Blue Protocol got picked up by another publisher after it was discontinued in Japan, and then moving into their launch what seems to be potentially in October. So I have gotten into the closed beta test, and I have played it a pretty significant portion so far. There are still some things I needed to explore and test, but we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit here. But I did want to talk about my kind of overall impressions, things that I'm kind of really enjoying about the game, and just, things that I might be worried about, etc. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so if you're interested in Blue Protocol Star Resonance, one of the things that you're probably very, very interested in is the anime art style. Now, this it's everything that you could think of. The cosmetics are amazing looking, the characters, designs, even the cutscenes, everything feels very anime, so it's got really got that going for it. And to be honest, there's not really a lot to say about that. You can kind of just see that everywhere. Hopefully you're seeing it in some of the background video that I have going on right now. I am going to be playing background footage, hopefully from the different things that kind of show off what I'm kind of talking about here. But this kind of anime art style is going to be prevalent everywhere through the entire game. You should be able to get a pretty good feel from that from watching this video or any other, stuff that you've seen on the internet about the game. So for me personally, the big thing in a game like this, or pretty much any MMO, is, what's combat like? What's it feel like? How do the classes play? How are boss designs? So far, we haven't really gotten to see a lot of the game, and that's kind of something that I'll talk a little bit more about later, but we're kind of still too early to really tell, but this is why it's part of my first impressions video. Combat is looking really good. It feels really good. I am very much enjoying my time playing the combat, doing dungeons, etc. And so think it's really off to a pretty great start. We'll have to see how far it goes. There's going to be a lot more that we get access to. We're going to get access to specializations for each class. On top of that, we're going to get access to different things like modules. We don't really know what those do yet. And there's, other stuff going on behind the scenes that we're still kind of waiting more till we get closer to endgame to really figure out. So in its current state, it does feel maybe a little bit simple. And so as I mentioned to someone last night on my stream, we are streaming this every single night, by the way, or at least most nights, while we have access to the beta. I am trying to make sure I get most of the real experience for the beta in. But anyway, as I was saying, the combat does feel maybe a little simplified. Some of the cooldowns, they're not too long, but you only have 5 abilities. One of them is your special attack or whatever. That's kind of locked for your class. And so realistically, you only get, I think, 4 ability choices that you can actually make for yourself. So that does kind of, like I said, it kind of simplifies the class a little bit. You can kind of tell from that kind of, gameplay that it was designed to be something that you could play on mobile. I'm hoping that maybe things will kind of open up a little bit more, but even if it is a little bit simple in its combat, style right now, I don't think that that's too bad of a thing. Cooldowns are fairly short, and so, multiple of them have multiple stacks, at least for the class that I'm playing. And so with relatively short cooldowns and multiple stacks, it's not like I'm getting bored or anything like that. And auto attacking does seem like it is, part of your actual gameplay and something that you want to be doing, at least for the class that I am currently playing. So while simple, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We'll have to see more how it advances late game. I'm curious to see if there are anything like maybe tier set bonuses or maybe the modules or whatever that really kind of shake up gameplay a little bit. I personally prefer when I have more abilities than less. So maybe, something closer to like Crystal of Atlan, where each ability or each button on the combat bar or whatever was 2 abilities instead. Just kind of giving us a little bit more ability spam would be cool, but it just really depends on, what it is that you like and stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily saying that it's too simple, but it's definitely simpler than something like World of Warcraft or something like that has, an abundance of abilities and stuff like that. But a lot of people also feel like those games often have button bloat. And so this game won't have that issue because you just don't have enough spells to have any kind of bloat like that, which, is good or bad, depends on how you feel about it. On top of that, you do have access to 2 imagines. So if you played Genshin Impact or Wuthering Waves or whatever, actually Wuthering Waves would probably be the best example. This would be similar to like an Echo ability. So they're monsters or friends that you've obtained the Imagine of, and you can summon them, and they have different effects and do different things. Sometimes you turn into them to use an ability. Other times you summon them on the field and they use their ability by themselves. But they usually give you buffs alongside their damage or whatever benefit they're going to give you. So that will also add a little bit to the variance and build styles that, are going to come out of this game later on. I personally like that kind of, build variation. So I'm really hoping that the community doesn't get too pigeonholed into, this is the best set of stuff, but we'll have to wait and see until later on. So with that being said, I also think another like really great part of the game is the class design and identity. So from what I can tell and what I've seen so far, every class seems to be very, very distinct. And there's not really a lot of overlap between the two. Even my class that I'm playing, it's kind of like the druid healer class, or every class has two specializations. For example, though, my druid class can go into a more offensive turns into healing type thing. So think maybe like your smite healers in World of Warcraft, for example, or just kind of any class that turns damage into healing, versus the standard like holy priest kind of option where it's just more of like a lot of improved healing ability and just like huge throughput, right? But less damage at the cost of that higher healing throughput. So it's kind of cool to see that even within the classes themselves, the different specializations or kind of trees or talent trees kind of thing that you would see in other games is going to have some variation. Now, I haven't gotten far enough to unlock those yet, so I don't know how deep those go. I'm hoping that they're going to be fairly involved and change more of how the class works. But so far from what I've seen, I know they change your special attack, which is that one that you can't change normally by yourself. But it's nice to see that it is going to evolve and enhance your gameplay, at least from what I've seen from the druid class. Overall, I'm very, very happy so far with the combat and the class design, and I'm really looking forward to seeing again how that evolves over time, if we're going to get more abilities, if we're going to have tier sets that change how our playstyle feels, or if we're going to get imagines maybe that change the way certain skills work for certain classes or whatever. So we'll have to see how that all goes. But I'm hopeful, and I think they have a lot of room that they can grow, even if, as I said before, the system can feel a little bit simple right now. So now that we've talked about combat and kind of class design and kind of how those are, looking so far, again, I'm pretty happy with both of them so far. I'm looking forward to see where they expand. But we also have boss design. So boss design, for reference, we're only like level 36 or so right now. And so we're pretty early game, I still think, pretty early to maybe mid game. But we have seen mechanics happening in even the lower level dungeons, and we've seen that they're already reusing some of those lower level dungeons to do harder content, which I'm a huge, huge fan of. I love to see them reusing kind of the content they've already created and give us more stuff to do. I think that's fantastic. But even the world bosses themselves have had things like mechanics and stuff like that you actively need to be actively dodging and stuff like that to actually deal the damage and complete the encounters that you need to. So there's mechanics even in the earliest dungeons where you have to bounce an electric ball back and forth after you collect some shields to kind of go around a shield. So that's been kind of cool. But a lot of dodging here. Everything seems to be really well telegraphed. I really, really like that. And even yesterday, we did do another activity. It wasn't exactly a boss fight. It was kind of a boss fight. It's a tower event fight or something. So you're climbing multiple floors of the tower, and you have to clear the waves and then get to the boss and also clear the boss themselves, along with all the ads within a certain time frame. So the variety of, end game or like, encounters and stuff like that feels pretty good so far. We'll have to see how much more there is to offer as we continue to progress. It is still early. We only have access to a handful of dungeons. And also keep in mind, this is only the closed beta test. So ultimately, there may not be, that many dungeons available to us right now. But Again, first impressions, I'm feeling pretty good about the dungeon and boss design, as well as the variety of activities that you can do in the game, at least so far at this low level. So if there's no more at endgame, I would maybe be a little disappointed. But as long as they continue to reuse this content and expand in the future, I think it would be a pretty good place to start. So something that I'm actively loving so much right now is the social aspect of the game. So if you're looking for a single player MMO, this is not that. So far, that has not been my impression. I actually had a discussion with somebody last night on stream about this. If you are looking for a single player MMO, this is not for you. This game is very heavily focused around grouping up with other players and doing the content together. But they're also trying to make things more social in other ways too. They made it so that way if you're dancing in town, people can walk up to you and immediately join your dance, for example. Personally, that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for in my MMO. I want to have interaction with other people. I want to be playing a massively multiplayer game with other people. And so for me, this has all been a very, very positive thing, and I'm really heavily looking forward to seeing how it plays out more in the future. There's guilds, there's guild activities. You can get points for your guild for doing a guild dance weekly. So I'm really, really excited to see more of what this has to offer. And again, we are only in the closed beta, so we're not really going to get access to probably seeing a lot of this stuff because there's just a limit of how many players can play in a closed beta. But there hasn't been, we didn't have to pick a world. Everything's done by channels. And so it seems like everyone's just kind of playing together, which I think is a really, really great thing. This is something that I wish Lost Ark would lean more into. If we didn't have to worry about like, oh, you know, like NA East versus NA West, blah, 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 I think the game would be in a much better spot. So, you know, having this one kind of world where we're all kind of playing together, you know, if you go on the list of guilds that, you know, are recruiting right now, you can go and you can find people like Cannon, you can find people like Brax, you can find people like Bidoof, all these content creators and stuff like that that you see on YouTube or just in the space or whatever. You can see them in game. Everyone's a part of the community together, and I think that kind of adds a sense of, you know, togetherness, for lack of better, you know, phrasing. But it really is like you walk around, you see tons of people, and it makes the world feel more alive. I'm out in the open world, and I was climbing a cliff and trying to figure out how to do it. And this guy ran up next to me. I don't know if I'll be able to find the footage of it, but he ran up next to me. He figured out how to do it, and then he stood at the top of it, kind of cheering me on until I got up there. And I didn't even realize it until afterwards. But like, it's just little stuff like that that adds, you know, the cool friendliness part of the open world. If you just have a world that exists with NPCs, it's not really alive. And that's part of what an MMO should be. So I think this game is already doing a fantastic job of encouraging players to be more social and interact with each other, not just in the party finders, but also in the open world. Okay, so that's kind of all of it, or not all of it, but that's a lot of the really important things that I'm really excited about and really loving about the game. You know, I was going back through and I was listening to the video as I was editing it and stuff, and I really wanted to add too that like that this is just a short list of things that I really like on my first impressions, but there's a lot more. The fact that like the voice actors are so familiar, especially if you're familiar with, you know, anime and just stuff like that. Like you'll hear like, you know, really big Japanese voice actors. You'll hear Lelouch, you'll hear Kirito, you'll hear like lots of people that you'll be familiar with from, you know, different anime series. And like that's a huge deal having these really big people like voice acting that. The music's fantastic. The like environments are so cool. The art is amazing. There's a lot of things to really, really like about this game. These were just a few of the bigger points that I felt like mattered a bit more to me. Although a lot of those things are really great and they are amazing, the combat is what really is going to keep me playing in the game long term. And if I don't have the combat, even if it had everything else, right, it wouldn't be quite the same and it wouldn't keep me around. So I think it's time to talk about some other things. One of them, the Timegate. The Timegate honestly feels unbelievable. I'll have to go back and look. I'll put a little text on the screen to let you guys know, but I'm not kidding when I tell you I did the new quests that were available yesterday, and I think it was like 4 more story quests, and that was it. And it got me from like 29 to like 34 or something. And then I got locked out of the story quest again. So what that really does is it really limits how fast you can level, and it kind of adds a cap for like what the end game is, or what the level end game is for that day. And so far, it seems to be really slow. We're moving, I believe the first day it was 21, the second day it was like 27, the third day it was like 33. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just small incremental things that kind of really force you to, oh, well, you're kind of done for the day. You can kind of work on some other stuff. Maybe, go do some side quests. You can, once you finish all of those, maybe you could do some life skilling. You can't really grind this game the way that I really want to, at least not at the start. And that could be because it's a beta test, but I do believe they actually did a similar pacing in the Chinese actual release. So I personally, I think this is a terrible system. I think part of being an MMO is letting players decide how they want to play, and forcing them to stop and do something else is the exact opposite of that. And so I really, really would encourage the devs to drop this idea. I think their idea is that it's going to be better for the kind of casual player. But what it's instead doing, and it's already doing it even in a limited time closed beta test, is like I logged in yesterday, but I didn't log in the day before because I was like, I'm only going to miss out on doing 4 quests early, and I can do them the following day. And I think that's really, really bad, especially when your game is first launching. Like, I'm already trying to be as excited about this as I can. I am really excited about it, and I'm really loving every minute that I play. But when I'm so walled off from continuing and enjoying that fun, it really is a buzzkill. And having that buzzkill really prevents me from, being excited about it every single day. Even tonight, I want to go and play tonight, but I know I'm going to have 4 quests to do instead of the 8 that I had to do yesterday. And I'm going to have to go do some other side quests, or, check out some life skilling, which I do need to do. I do need to do those things. I haven't checked out life skilling yet. I haven't gone through and unlocked other classes yet. I do want to do those things. But again, it really just puts it's just a buzzkill, right? Like, I'm excited about it. I'm in the moment. I'm feeling good. And then I hit this wall where I can't go any further. And I'm like, I could just log in a few days. But the thing that you don't want your player base to do is feel like they don't want to log in, right? And that's what's happening. I want to log in, but then I'm like, but I don't really want to log in because I don't want to get that buzzkill. And so what that does is, at first it says, okay, well, maybe I'll just wait a few days, and then I'll play in a few days. And then it's like a few days later, and I'm like, you know what? I've been really enjoying this other stuff right now, and so that's not really as big of a deal to me. And so what ends up happening is, I always tell people this too, the best way to quit an MMO or any live service game is to take a break. And what I mean by that is, when you take breaks from games like this, or even other games, Genshin Impact or whatever, any of those games that have daily grinds that you don't necessarily, there's some negative aspect, some friction that you're having with that system or that game in some way. When you start taking breaks from it, you don't have that friction anymore, and you start focusing on the things that you're actually enjoying, or things that you're finding elsewhere that you can also enjoy. And so what that does, it makes it really easy to quit said game. And so I don't want Blue Protocol to do that to themselves, especially on their launch. I want them to allow the players to grind as much as they want, and if they grind themselves out, they grind themselves out. But no one is going to be pissed because they grinded themselves into oblivion. And if they are, they're just being dumb, right? If you grind for 1,000 hours and then you're like, oh man, I hate this game, I don't want to play it anymore, that's your problem. And that's not really the developer's problem. But they'll also look at it and say, hey, I enjoyed those 1,000 hours. And so if you enjoyed those 1,000 hours, you're likely to go back, or you're going to have friends that are likely going to go back. If you're not having friction, you're going to be feeling better about the game overall. And then finally, the monetization. So I know a lot of people, and even somebody came into my stream last night asking about the monetization. And, they were worried because the free to play currency is also used to buy items that you need for progression. Now, it's really hard to tell how big of a deal this is this early into the game, but also in a closed beta test. What they're giving us might not be representative of the actual, in-game economy that you're going to have on the actual launch of a game. And I do have some possible reservations about this, but I'm trying to keep an open mind, just like I did with Crystal Vatland. Trying to keep an open mind until we get more into the end game and you really understand, what's going to be our daily or weekly income of these resources. Do I feel the need to swipe to get more of this currency, etc.? So you can use the free to play currency to buy things you need for honing, or refining is what it's called in this game, and reforging. But you can also use them to buy cosmetics. So you can save them for cosmetics, you can use them for progression. Now, if you can do enough of the other stuff in the game to get this stuff, for reference, a lot of the materials that I'm looking at being able to purchase with this material is actually stuff that you would get doing life skills, or other like profession-based systems. So you can make a lot of it, if not all of it. So if I'm feeling heavily limited on those things, then this becomes a bigger deal. But I believe the way that the director said that the life skill system works, and I still need to go back and check, so take this with a grain of salt, is you get a certain amount of daily life skill stuff that you can do, and then after that, it just becomes less effective. So gathering, for example, if you just want to go on gathering for hours and hours and hours, I think the first, little bit or whatever, you'll get full value out of it. And then after that, it starts getting you like some diminishing returns type thing. So again, I'm going to test that more soon, definitely during this closed beta test, because I do want to see how big of an issue this could end up being in the future. And that's going to be something good to just understand. But the game does look like it will definitely have some pay to win elements that way, right? So if you can swipe and buy these materials, it means you can hone more. It means you don't have to spend time doing life skills. It means your friend can just spend $100 and get what you spent hours and hours and hours to get. So if that's something that's going to turn you off, understand that going into this game. Again, I don't know the true depth of what it is. Actually, I saw that 1010 said that he's going to make a video about understanding the pay to win. And I think that would be good for anyone who is curious about it to check out. I'm going to be checking it out for sure. And then also, trying to explore it more in the beta itself. You can swipe to like get a better feel for it at the moment, but I'm not going to be doing that for one. And two, I still have more in the game that I need to figure out first. So again, if I'm feeling like I can get what I need from doing those life skills, then I'm not going to feel inclined or feel like I would want to swipe. And with any free-to-play MMO or free-to-play game in general, we have skins. So I think the skins in this game are actually kind of cool looking, and some of them are a bit more Coomer, some of them are less Coomer. And so I'm excited to see what kind of skins they come out with. I actually think the gotcha skin right now is the worst skin in the game, weirdly enough. But they do give you different pieces, and you can buy some with free-to-play currency as well. So you can even look the way that you might want to look, just completely free to play. So I think overall the skins look pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with the different variations that they have, and I think the battle pass skin actually looks like one of the cooler skins of the game. Which, personally, battle passes usually end up being worth it, I think. So if I was gonna spend money on the game, it likely would be a battle pass type system. So I'm glad to see that those skins aren't just lame, because sometimes they are. Sometimes they'll just kind of lock the cool skins behind the gotcha system and then make things like battle pass skins more generic and stuff. That doesn't seem to be the case this time. and I'm pretty excited about that. But you have everything ranging from bikinis to kimonos to magician robes, etc. You kind of have the gambit of it. Of course, there's not that much in the game yet, but I imagine this is going to grow significantly over time. And then also, there's like a handful of different currencies, and so figuring that out, I'm probably gonna make a whole video about understanding the currencies once I have a better idea of it. But there's like 5 or 6 different currencies, and some of them are premium, some of them are not premium, and yeah. Anyway, it's a microtransaction mess, but that's just kind of the name of the game in a free to play game like this. I wish they didn't lean so heavily into it. If they just made it like free to play, bound currency and then, paid currency, and that was it, I think the game would be a lot simpler, but they got to do what they got to do, they think. So my overall thoughts are right now, I'm actually really, really enjoying the game. And to be honest, I think it's a pretty good contender for being my like main play game in the coming future. So later this year. I think there's a lot of things in the game that could be improved, but for a game launch, I think it's in a pretty good spot right now. Obviously, more content will always be better. More cosmetics will also always be better. Like I said, I'd love it if they change the monetization so it's at least less convoluted, but I guess I get to make a video out of it, so I guess that's okay for me personally. But yeah, in general, I think the game is in a pretty good spot. The combat feels great, which is the most important thing, I think, personally. The progression feels good. You can get a lot of gear in a lot of meaningful ways, whether it be drops or like even trading in tokens and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's in a pretty good spot. The combat feels great. The boss design feels like it's off to a pretty good start. Everything's pretty interesting. Character models are interesting. Even the story is pretty good. I know I didn't talk about the story much, but that's because, one, I don't think a lot of people truly care about the story of an MMO, but personally, I think it's pretty cool. The story is kind of cool, and Aranea, whatever her name is, the main character kind of becomes like our companion that we're gonna be going around and doing all this stuff with. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes further on. But I think it's off to a good start, and I think that Blue Protocol Star Resonance has a potentially bright future in the West, as long as they can kind of curtail some of the complicated issues and maybe get rid of some of that extra time gating. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, please like the video down below. If you want to see more content like this, or you're interested in other MMOs, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Peace out, guys.